Let's get started. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about BookBub ads. I'm excited for you all to be here. We have Brian Berni from bookads.co and Fiction Marketing Academy and author pilot. He does a lot of stuff. So he's super knowledgeable, and I'm excited to have this chat with him today, because BookBub Ads is one of those platforms that we don't hear talked about all that frequently in the author community. And where there's less competition, less saturation, you can usually get a better return on investment on those ads. So I'm really excited to see whether or not that actually plays out in real life, and hear some stories from Brian about how that works out. I think one thing that is worth noting up front, we're talking about BookBub's advertising platform. So not like your standard sort of BookBub deal that you might try to get into BookBub's newsletters for, but BookBub's advertising platform, where you can actually have an ad inserted onto their website, sort of like you would whenever you see an ad coming across your Facebook timeline, or whenever you search on Amazon, you might see an ad inserted there in the search results. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, not BookBub deals, which would be where you're getting into their newsletter. So let me turn it over to Brian real quick so he can give you a little bit of his background.
Thanks, Evan, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Glad to see you all here. I've been in books pretty much all my life. I used to be an academic working with manuscripts at the Vatican Library. A bit of a fun facts about me there. But since then, in 2016, I founded an agency that helps authors with their paid advertising. We started with Amazon ads because at the time it was when Amazon opened the advertising platform to authors and to KDP authors. And then since then, we've also added BookBub ads. We don't do Facebook ads because we specialize in Amazon and BookBub. Since 2016, we've worked with many authors. Majority has been Amazon ads, of course, but we have worked pretty much, nonstop with BookBub as well. We haven't had any time span where we haven't had authors running BookBub ads. I think we've pretty much mastered the platform, because in terms of design of the ads, we're often cited on the BookBub blog as a best practice in terms of design, but we'll talk about all this during the session. But yes, I run an agency. I also run a virtual event, which is called Fiction Marketing Academy. It's going to be happening at the end of October. But this time is going to be the fourth installment, and it's all about book marketing, especially for fiction authors. All online. It's what used to be known as a summit. But you can find it at fictionmarketingacademy.com. We still don't have the new, at the time of recording this, the new page, but it's where you're going to find it when it's live.
So maybe you can just start with giving us like a quick overview of how does BookBub's advertising platform work?
Yeah. So as you mentioned in the beginning, there's pretty much two sides to BookBub. The BookBub deal that everyone mentions, when they say, I got a BookBub, or I'm applying for a BookBub. And then BookBub ads, which is what we do. And it's essentially self-served advertising to which anyone can access. But before that, to make this a bit more clear, you need to think of BookBub in two ways. There's two sides to the site. On the one hand, you have the reader side. So you can sign up to BookBub and you can, create a profile there. You can have your favorite authors. You can comment and, comment on books. I think they're trying to make it a little bit more social, a little bit more like book reads and things like that for readers. And at the same time, what you can do is subscribe to specific email newsletters that BookBub sends. The main one is the featured deal. So what you do is, as a reader, you sign up to BookBub and you specify which is your or are your main interests. So categories mainly, I don't know, cozy mystery, thriller, whatever. And what they do at that point is every single day they send you an email with deals on ebooks for those specific categories. And then you get them in your email, you browse them, you click, and hopefully you buy. So this is the reader side of BookBub. For an author, there's two ways in which you can interact with your readers. Well, obviously, having a profile on there is always a good idea. Again, a little bit like Goodreads, you have your presence there, but you can either apply to be on those emails as a featured deal. And this is what everyone talks about when they say, I'm getting a BookBub. This is, on one hand, very expensive, but at the same time, very, very, very effective. Not as effective as it used to be a few years ago, but still the best probably promotion site out there, ever. So it's something that everyone recommends. Even if it's a bit expensive, you are going to make your money back and then some. The other thing you can do, the other problem with this, apart from it being a little bit expensive, is that you need to be accepted. And the acceptance criteria is very, very strict. They sort of pride themselves in being very selective because they want the newsletter to be top quality, which it is. And so even though, you might be, your book might be fine in terms of, great cover, great reviews and things like that, they might take a little bit more to approve it, like reject you once or twice and then approve you. So little side note there, the advice there is always to keep on applying. But that's a bit difficult, as you can see, because it might take time before they accept you. On the other hand, what you can do is run BookBub ads, which is what we are talking about today. And essentially, it's running ads in various places of their website, but this is a little bit less effective. What's more effective is running an ad at the end of that specific featured deals email that I was talking about. So you can be on that email, but you have to pay for it, if you see what you mean. If you see what I mean, you are advertising on that email. Now, as you can imagine, this is probably the most targeted way of advertising we have, because, and I'll probably talk about this later, but if you think of Facebook is pretty much the least targeted way, even though you specify targets and all of that, but you are essentially interrupting people watching cat videos or doing, all kinds of other things on Facebook, and you are trying to convince them to click on your page, to click on your book, and to make the sale. That's a lot of convincing to you have to do. Second place is Amazon. People are on Amazon already looking for books. They might be looking for one in your genre. They might be looking for one of your competitors. And at that point, especially with Amazon advertising, your task is to make them change their mind and click on yours instead. With BookBub, they are receiving an email, which is notoriously the best way of communicating in terms of marketing. They are receiving an email with deals, so they are saving money, with deals on a specific genre that they have opted in for. And so it's super targeted in terms of genre. And obviously they are receiving deals for books. So if you do your job well and you make sure you put your ads into one of those emails, you're pretty much good because this is going to be the key. Targeting is going to be the key. But I wanted to just stress the fact that the reader is super, super warm, as they say in marketing languages, to the sale, essentially.
Makes sense. So I didn't know that. I assumed that the BookBub advertising platform was mostly about putting ads into sort of that reader side that you were talking about earlier, that sort of Goodreads kind of a
Yeah.
community that they're trying to cultivate now on BookBub, and inserting ads there. I didn't know that you could also get your ads inserted into those BookBub newsletters.
Yeah.
How does that work? Is that like when you are setting up your advertising on BookBub, on their ad platform, presumably you can say where you want that ad to be shown, and then it gives you options for like particular newsletters or in their feed in particular genres or something like that. Like what are the different places that you can choose to have your ad shown when you're on BookBub's advertising platform?
Surprisingly not. You don't have a choice.
Oh, really?
Because, and this is something else that needs to be said about the BookBub interface and the dashboard. It's very, very bare bones. A little bit like Amazon ads used to be in the beginning, and it has been so for years now. So I think it's a specific aim is to keep it simple. But there's two ways to target, and we'll talk about this. And one is cost per thousand impressions, CPM, and the other one is CPC, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. If you choose CPC, the ad can either go in the newsletter, but also on the site. If you use CPM, it will only go in the newsletter. You can't specify it yourself because the work is done by the algorithm. And so it will always show the ads to the place where it thinks it's going to convert best, essentially. The algorithm isn't as fine-tuned as Amazon, for example, or let alone Facebook, but the majority of ads are displayed on the newsletters anyway.
Okay, so that's interesting because usually usually other ad platforms allow you to specify where you want those ads to be shown.
Yeah,
But in this case, it's actually the payment method, whether or not you're talking about cost per thousand impressions or cost per click. That is what actually ends up
yeah,
sort of deciding whether or not you go newsletter only or newsletter and website. That is
yeah.
a little
But
bit surprising.
one thing that they sort of stress all the time is that the ads on the site are like an added benefit. I mean, if you really want, you also have ads on the site and you can try those. Don't focus too much on them. What you want to do is get that ad at the end of the email. So there's not really, I mean, I guess they could offer the possibility to choose if they make the platform a bit more more
More
things to
robust.
control, more robust. Yeah, but well, you want always want to be at the end of the email anyway. So
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I guess if they did allow you that more fine-grained control, you might see that if you just did the website advertising only, that might end up costing you less because you're getting less traffic there. And so they're sort of mixing the two and you end up paying a little bit more because what you really want is to get into those newsletters.
yeah,
So,
it's I mean it's something that they are strongly trying to achieve is to make BookBub the site a sort of a meeting place for authors where they can discuss and things. I don't think they've done that very well because it's never really taken off, and that's why they also offer the ads on the site because they want traffic to be on the site as well. Um,
right.
but it's like I said, it's an added benefit.
Yeah. We got a great question from the audience here. On average, how many ads are at the end of those BookBub newsletters?
Only one.
Only one. They'll only put one
Yes.
ad in there.
Yes, and the extraordinary thing is that the decision, a little bit like Amazon ads, the decision on what ad is displayed is made in the split fraction of a millisecond where you open the email. And so when somebody opens the email, there's a lot of things that go into play, but mainly, a bit like Amazon, the bid and the target are the ones that determine whether or not your ad is going to win. And if your ad wins, then it's going to be displayed to the reader. Another incredible thing is that an ad can only be seen by the reader 4 times. So if you have I don't know, 4 emails and you see the same ad for 4 times, you're never going to see it again. Because in the algorithm's mind, that means if nothing has happened, they haven't clicked, this ad is not resonating, so they're not going to show it. So yeah, I find it incredible the way they can sort of display the ad inside your email when you're opening it, but it's how it works. Yeah.
So if you close the email and then you open it back up again, do you get a different ad?
No, for 4 times you don't, but after four
Okay.
times you do.
Okay, so if someone closes and open an email 4 times, then they'll get displayed a different ad
Yeah,
in that email. Interesting. That is, yeah. That
very
definitely
interesting.
requires a little bit of technical work on their end to make something
Yeah,
like that happen for sure.
exactly. I can imagine it's probably in very intense coding of some sort, and you can probably help me with that. But
Yeah.
it's marvelous.
Um, uh, we also have some questions around
Sure.
what is like the average, because we're talking about targeting, and we're talking about CPM versus CPC. We're talking about how those ads get determined. What goes into an email is based on basically how much you're bidding and whether or not it's the right audience for that ad. So what typically do authors need to pay, like on a CPM basis, to have their ad show up in that email?
Yeah. So this is a fairly complicated matter, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible to understand. I've pretty much I never use CPC. I always use CPM. And the reason for that is that in general, CPM performs better. One thing that we need to say before that is BookBub ads only work if you test the targets before you actually go sort of big or you actually increase your budget on them. The reason for that is because you don't know what's going to perform. Now, this is true for every single platform out there, but it's mostly true for BookBub because BookBub is its own little ecosystem. So, just to give you an example, if an author is big or is the perfect comp author for you on Amazon, they might not even show up on BookBub because BookBub's data is based on BookBub alone. And so if an author has I don't know, 50,000 people following, and there's more things that come to my mind that I'd like to say, but I'm trying to keep it simple. But if an author has a 50,000 people audience on BookBub, they might be much bigger on Amazon. So the cost per click is determined by that as well. So it's determined in comparison with other authors inside of BookBub. The reason why I always choose CPM is because when I test, I usually want the results fast. And so I use CPM, I max out my bid, and we'll talk about this in more detail if you want. But essentially, what I do is BookBub tells me the normal CPM for this author is $11. Okay. So what I do is I bid 20, but I'm never going to pay $20 because I am capped by the daily budget. So I'm telling BookBub that I am the highest bidder, but I'm not paying that because I've got a $5 a day budget, for example. So that also determines the CPC. So once the CPM, the ad is firing essentially, and it says reached, I don't know, 500 impressions, then I'm going to see what the CPM is costing me. This is data that BookBub gives me, but it's not my first sort of choice. So I don't approach them by saying, I want to bid 34 cents because of what I said. The BookBub ecosystem is very different. And so for an author, which would normally cost me even $1 on Amazon, I might be able to get clicks for much cheaper on BookBub, and I usually am. So that's the main reasoning behind that. What some authors do is they start with CPM, and then once they know the CPC, which is what is the result of the CPM ads, they then run CPC ads, for example, to have more ads on the site and things like that. But I've never ever had more success with CPC.
Interesting. Okay. And we had a question in here, and some other authors might be because we keep throwing around CPM and CPC, and we did touch briefly on them. But just to define it again, CPM stands for cost per mil. So mil being the French term for 1,000. So cost per 1,000, and that means cost per 1,000 impressions. So CPM is what you would pay for 1,000 people to see that ad. So if you're paying $20 CPM, that means you're paying $20 for 1,000 people to see that ad. And then let's say that 5 people click on that ad, okay? Then that means that you've paid $20 for 5 clicks. So if you just take 20 divided by 5, that means you're paying $4 per click. So that would give you your cost per click. Now, when you're setting up those ad campaigns, you can choose whether or not you want to bid for those ad slots based on CPM or CPC. And so what Brian is saying, that he always chooses CPM. Now, at the end of the day, you're going to have a CPM or CPC that is, you can calculate for your ad, regardless of which targeting metric you choose. But that targeting metric is how BookBub determines which ad gets inserted into the newsletter. So hopefully hopefully we can all be on the same page. It is all confusing, especially for those who have never used an advertising platform like Facebook or Amazon, etc. When you're learning all these terms at the outset.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the fact that you're not going to spend $20 because this is what you tell them you are prepared to spend. And in this case, you will be the highest bidder. But at the same time, your spend is capped by your daily budget. So $5, that's what you're going to spend on that ad per day if you let it go, obviously. But the reason behind bidding so high is so that you are the highest bidder and so that the ad gets shown. And so once you've done the testing phase, then you can, dial back the spend, you can make all your calculations.
Yeah. So just to reiterate there as well, it's like, so if you're saying you're going to pay $20 CPM, $20 for 1,000 impressions, then you set your maximum daily budget at, let's say $10 for ease of math. Then as soon as your ad gets inserted into 5 newsletters, and let's say that as soon as your ad gets 500 impressions, you would end up hitting that $10 daily budget because you've set a $20, and so you're not going to go all the way up to that 1,000 impressions because you're going to hit your daily budget before you hit that bid of $20. So you'll have spent your $10 for the day.
Correct.
Okay. That makes a ton of sense. So that's how you do that testing part, because if you and that's where the testing is important too, right? Because if you put an ad out and you cap yourself at let's say a $2 CPM, and everyone else is bidding $3, $4, $5 CPM, then your ad is going to never get shown. And so you don't know whether or not that ad is going to get clicks, right? Because that's what you want to, that is what you're testing for, is whether or not that ad is going to get clicks, right? So if your ad never gets shown, you don't know whether or not it's going to get clicks. So you have to bid super, super high, make sure that your ad gets shown, and then you will ultimately you keep yourself from spending a ton of money by setting that daily budget, and then just see if that ad gets clicks. And if it's not getting clicks, then come up with a different, creative, come up with different artwork, come up with different copywriting for the ad, etc.
Yes, totally. And this is critical because the BookBub ecosystem is different. So some authors might not work, but also because I prefer the strategy people call failing fast. So I prefer to spend a little bit more, like $5 a day on this author, another $5 on the other author while testing, and get the data fast rather than starting with CPC at 15 cents and it's not going. So I raise it to 17 and then to 20. I want the
Right.
data fast. That's
Right.
why.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. If you spend, 3 months sitting at, a really low CPM bid and you just never finding out whether or not your ad's getting clicks, then you just don't know where to go from there. You're just still waiting. And so it makes a
Yeah.
ton more sense to, like you said, fail fast and figure out what is working. That way you can start to, and then once you've got the right, sort of copy locked in, the right graphics locked in, and oh, okay, this is only costing me X dollars per click because I'm spending, this much on this is how many impressions it's getting and this is how many clicks it's getting. That will tell you, okay, now this is where I want to go big. So let's talk a little bit about uh graphics and copywriting for BookBub ads. Can you tell us, how does that work?
Yeah. So the one thing that's surprisingly advanced in BookBub ads, which as we know now are not super advanced in terms of the dashboard, is that you can either they've got a little sort of embedded mini Canva sort of thing that is their own graphic tool, designing tool, where basically you can choose the background, you can choose the color of the button and the call to action, and it's embedded inside of the dashboard, and so you can use that if you're just starting out, for example. So they do offer that. They did make a few improvements to that. It used to be just very, very bare bones, but now you can change font height a little bit and things like that. That being said, I strongly, strongly recommend doing your own graphics. And when I say your own, I mean possibly outsource them and possibly to someone who's done BookBub graphics before, because it's a very, very small, it's like a stamp on the email at the end of the email, and so you got to grab people's attention, as we all know, for example, on Facebook. So you got to have the right elements on there. The best way is to outsource it. Yes, of course. You can do it on your own by using things like BookBrush or Canva, for example. Little bit less, BookBrush is specifically made for authors, and they do have templates in there. What you do with the graphic is very, very dependent upon your results from the testing, as we said. So you can start in one way and slowly with A/B testing, tweaking the copy, tweaking the message on the button that you put on there, the actual graphics that are on the graphics. So the maybe you have your a section of your cover and things like that. The reason why BookBub is good in testing is also because you can actually do A/B testing. You can't really do that with Amazon, but with BookBub ads, you can run two different ads to the same author target, and you will know straight away what the performance is. In terms of best practices, there's a lot of different situations because things work better for different types of books, box sets or Kindle Unlimited books and things like that. We found that the best thing is to, for example, don't have the button anymore. Strangely, we found that removing the button is working, as well, if not even better than having the button, and having something that compels the reader to click, obviously. So, for example, free for today only, free on Kindle Unlimited, having maybe a Kindle Unlimited logo, all things you can do with BookBrush, for example. I can show you a few examples if you want.
We would love to see them.
Another thing that I wanted to encourage you to do is sign up for BookBub as a reader if you haven't done so already, obviously, and also sign up for one of their email lists and look at the ads that BookBub is serving you and see if there's anything you like on those. You know, do screenshots, keep them somewhere where you can use them to show your graphic designer when you will be creating ads on your own. So this is a typical BookBub Ads graphic. You see, usually we have the cover on the left, and then on the right, there's some copy. These ones that you can see here, for example, this one still has the button. This is what we call the button. It's basically the call to action that looks like a button, but people can click anywhere on the image. And that's really what it is. It's a split second in which you have to catch their attention. So it's best to have fewer words that are very sort of curiosity inducing into the reader, so they click. Or maybe like I said, a striking image like this, for example, pops a lot because it's red. I can show you other examples. We've got nonfiction, which a lot of people say doesn't work for BookBub ads. It does, not always, but it does. Or as you can see, we've been removing the call to action altogether in these ads. Or for fiction, these ones, for example, if you go on the BookBub blog for authors, I saw someone put it on the chat. You can see examples of best practices when it comes to graphics.
How big do those ads show up in the newsletter?
This is what it looks like. It just says your ebook bargains for Wednesday. Today's Wednesday. So I am subscribed to a lot of genres and to a lot of, as you can see, because of my job, but you will have less deals because you're obviously not interested in every single genre. So these books that you see here are the people who got a BookBub, and the people who are paying and got accepted, and they are shown inside the email. You can see the discounted price, and you can see the normal price as well here. And you can also click on the retailer. One side note, BookBub doesn't actually say this, but they seem to like wide authors a bit more. And so you will see that a lot of these authors are wide, but there are some who are only on Kindle Unlimited. But I'm scrolling. See this one, for example. This one is free. I'm scrolling. And at the end of the email, after the last recommendation, again, you will have much less. This is the ad. So it's this size.
Okay.
You can click anywhere on it, and you have to, when you're setting up the ad, point the ad to a specific link. Another little tip that very few people know about is you don't have to actually send people to a retailer with BookBub ads. You can send them to a landing page, for example, on your own site, and not a lot of people know this. So, for example, if you have a landing page on your site to grow your email list, and it's a freebie, for example, you can use that as a target for the BookBub ad graphic. The only caveat that they give is it has to be a page where people can download a book. So you can't send them to your homepage or to buy your course or things like that. Otherwise, they will obviously pull it. But you can send them to your own site.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask that as well. So if I was trying to build my mailing list, I could have that ad pointed to a reader magnet landing page where someone has to sign up to my mailing list to get that free book.
Yeah.
That
definitely.
is that is very cool. Um, and someone else mentioned in the chat, just in case it's helpful to anyone else, that the ad size is 300 pixels by 250 pixels. And
Thank you.
I think that um, it also makes that, just seeing that example makes it really clear just how important it is to make sure that that text that you have on the image really needs to be quite large, because if it's too small, then it will be very difficult to read. So
Yeah.
just making sure that that text is really large on that image is really important. Someone else also asked, is this only for ebooks? Now, since we just talked about how this could be used for reader magnets and you can point it to links on your own website, presumably as well, you could point this to like a paperback link on Amazon or something like that as well.
Well, the ad needs to, if it mentions the format, it needs to be an ebook because the email is for ebooks only.
Got it.
Yeah, as you can see in the subject, your ebook bargains. Now, obviously, when somebody goes on Amazon and they see the ebook, they can also buy uh, the paperback, which is obviously up to them. But the main advertising has to be an ebook.
Interesting. Okay. And it looks like someone else said that they were told by support that they couldn't link to a page with an email sign up. And they had 2 out of 4 of their ads with their direct link blocked because they had a pop up for a newsletter, even though it wasn't a product page with a free download.
Mm,
Sorry, even though it was a product page with a free download. So,
mm-hmm.
um,
um, needs
have
to
you,
be a little bit needs to have a little bit of investigation. I'm guessing it's because of the pop-up, rather than just sending them to the page and that's it. But yeah, it's weird. It's probably because of the pop-up though.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely something for authors to keep in mind too. And I mean, if an ad gets rejected as well, I mean, the worst thing that they can do is tell you no, presumably, right? If you submit a link and they'll just reject it.
Yeah. And they'll
Got it.
and they'll usually tell you what the problem is. So
Okay. Gotcha.
yeah.
Um,
So if you want, because I understand seeing it in action might be better, and in the meantime I can answer the questions while I get to the page.
Yeah, yeah. If you could tell us a little bit about like those taglines that you have in the ads. How do you come up with those? Is there like any sort of advice around them, like number of words or number of characters, like starting with action verbs, or what kind of things have you seen work well there?
So the usual best practices are the ones that always work in marketing. So things like scarcity, only free for 2 days or only free today, things like that. If you know, for example, that a large portion of your reader base is on Kindle Unlimited, then you should definitely mention that. Something like free on Kindle Unlimited or things like that, because obviously you attract a very specific readership. But in terms of copy, it's very much testing. So if the author, the way we work with the author as an agency is usually, do you have any suggestions before we create the graphics? If they don't have any suggestions, we come up with 3 or 4 different variations, and then we submit them to the author and we ask them, what you think. What we typically do is, because as you can imagine, then the testing becomes a little bit more complicated, because you would have to test author A against image A plus copy A, image A plus copy B. And so it gets a bit complicated. So if you're just starting out and you want to, see how they perform, if you like it, if they work well, I would just start with maybe 2 phrases and then go from there.
So
So
keep
no
everything else the
real,
same. keep the
Yes,
image, the book cover, all of that the same. The only thing that you would change between those two ads is what the text is, what the little tagline that you have to interest people in, so that you can tell, okay, what is it about this ad? Because if you change too many things between the two, you don't know, okay, is it the graphic that's making this one better or the tagline? So
yes,
that makes a ton of sense.
yes. And always when you're testing, always test one thing at the time. Don't change more than one variable at the time, otherwise you won't know what was responsible for the result.
Makes sense. And
So,
and before we get into looking at how to design the
mhm.
ads as well, I'm just curious, so is this something as an agency that you guys do for the authors, or like is this, are you normally the one designing the ads for the authors, or do you outsource that, or have a partner that you're working with that is doing that?
Yes, we have a partner, a graphics team. They've been doing them since day one, and so they know exactly what to do in terms of the size, obviously, but also in terms of what to put on a graphic, and so I mean they've been doing it for years now, and so we're very sort of in sync with them, and I think we're doing a good job because, like I said, we were featured for probably like 5 years in a row. They always have at the end of the year, they have the BookBub blog has a roundup of the best designs and best practices, and hopefully uh, thankfully rather, we were featured on there. So
That's awesome. And um I'm curious as well, when it comes to working with authors, like what is the, how do you guys work with authors? Is that like they are paying uh for like a monthly amount, or how do you guys work with authors in terms of pricing?
yes, it depends a little bit on the situation because obviously, someone who wants to advertise for a launch, for example, at a fixed sort of term project is different from someone who has 20 books they want to keep on advertising, continuously. What we normally do is we run the ads from our account, which can be done contrary to Amazon and Facebook. So we run the ads from our account and then we charge the author for our spend plus a small percentage, which is essentially the ad budget plus our work. So the small percentage is that.
Gotcha. And is there any sort of fixed cost to it as well? Like there's like a minimum amount or anything like that that they need to spend with you guys?
No, the fixed cost would be the testing, meaning you will have to budget a little bit for testing. Normally, I test $5 per target per day. So if you only have one target, or we only have one target, it's going to be $5. If you want to test three authors, you're going to get results quicker, but it's going to cost you 5 times 3, so 15. I recommend usually let's set aside $50 so we can test 10 authors, and at that point we will know more or less what's going on. So
Gotcha,
it's not
gotcha.
a huge amount, but it has to be obviously factored in.
Right, right, right. You need some amount to determine whether or not, what you've created is going to work, or if you guys need to switch up
Yeah.
um the graphics and all of that stuff. That makes a ton of sense. What is the ROI usually like on an ad campaign when you're running BookBub ads, like spend versus return on investment? And recognizing that this can be tricky because if you are sending people to a free, a book that's free on Kindle during like a Kindle countdown period, and your goal is actually just to get as many downloads as possible and to hopefully get more reviews on the book that way or something along those lines, then you can't really look at the return on investment from a pure like this is how much I made versus how much I spent, because the goal is not to necessarily make money in that case. But Can you give us some idea around what that on investment looks like where you are targeting sales?
Yeah, that's one of the things I would have said, but you did.
Yeah.
So definitely agree. It's obviously depends on what you are, what you're aiming. So uh, once you have done the testing and the testing is good and you know that the targets are good, there's really there's only one limit, and that's the size of the audience of the target that you're targeting. So fortunately, BookBub ads are very, very responsive when it comes to increasing the budget. Now, as you know, Facebook, if you tell it to spend $50 today, it's going to spend it no matter what, but the results might not be good. Amazon struggles to spend all of your budget sometimes, often. So that's not good if you want to scale. But with BookBub ads, if you spend $5 and you see the things are working, you can spend $10, and that's going to usually bring, like in the old days, the 2x of what you did with $5, and then 3x, 4x. Of course, there is, like I said, a limit, and that's the size of the audience, because at some point it's going to burn out and to finish, sort of.
Yeah, and I think before we quickly, before we jump into designing those graphics, that's going to be part of it as well, is that people will be fatigued by seeing the same ad over and over again. So you have to change out those ad graphics every now and then, change out the taglines to keep it fresh. Otherwise, if people see, it's like when you're watching, watching YouTube or something, and you get the same ad 10 times in a day, you get tired of seeing the same thing and you just automatically check out. At the second you see that ad, you're just like, I know what this is, right?
Yeah, especially if you're targeting lots of books, the system won't recognize that they are from the same author, for example, like the actual graphic. And so they might be seeing your book one and then book two, book three. I mean, it's good, like that rule that says you need to see something 7 times before you buy, but it needs to be thought out a little bit better.
Can we take a look
do.
at
I do,
awesome.
yes, for sure. So here we are on the ads dashboard. This is the actual ads dashboard. You can see there's no tabs. This is it. This is all
Very
you get.
straightforward.
And yeah, very straightforward. And it can be found at this address. I don't know if you can see it in the screen share, but partners.
partners.bookbub.com/ad/new. Yep.
Yeah, you'll have to sign up and things like that. So you can select the reading format, ebook readers or audiobook listeners. This is because you can also advertise on their audiobook sort of branch, which is called Chirp. I don't know if you know that, but they also have a newsletter for audiobook. If you want to advertise on that, you will click on here. Then you can choose a book. They've got a small search engine inside, so you can search for the ISBN or author name. Not great, but I'm just going to try something like that. So you find your book. I mean, I could, and this is what I do for clients, I advertise other people's books. So I don't have to go into your account and run the ads from your account like you do for Amazon, for example, Facebook. So I select this. What price is your book? This is going to come into play a bit later, let's say 4.99. And this is the ad creative interface that they give you. So you can actually do everything in here. So you can select the layout, and again, pretty basic, but
and it looks like the background image they just take your book cover, blow it up, blur it out, so you get some of those same colors.
Yeah. Which is sometimes we do that as well. It's a little bit, not very, it doesn't look too professional, but anyways, if you want, you can select another cover if you don't like the one it pulled here, and then you simply write either the ad copy. So for example, unmissable thriller or whatever. The side ad copy, only on KU, for example. And then the button copy, which is the call to action. I don't know, by now. I know it's not great, but by not by now. So obviously, if you choose another layout, it's going to give you less options. I chose the one with the most options. I tend to recommend fewer words that are, to the point. There's this new layout they have as well. As you can see, they've removed the call to action, so we must be doing things right. They've removed it here as well. And you can choose the button color. You can see it, pretty straightforward. But what you can do is upload your existing creative, which is essentially simply having the creative done and then uploading it here. Then what you need to do is put the links where you want the ad to take people. So for example, your book on the Canada store, if you want, your book on Kobo, your book on Kobo Canada, and all of these can be added. You can also have the custom link, as we said before, for example, on your website. Now, what do you do with all these links? Do you need to put all the links? Well, if you have them, yes, use them. But if you don't go crazy. I would much rather have Amazon US on here alone rather than, a million links. The reason why they do this is that when somebody clicks, the algorithm automatically traces them and, geo localizes them. And so if you have a link on Amazon Canada, it's going to take them to Amazon Canada if they're clicking from Toronto, for example. So that's why they ask you to specify. But in terms of testing, for example, specifically, then you can just do US and that's fine, because that's where people have the most following anyways.
Right. And this is where I would also mention you could also use Story Origin's universal book link feature, which does something very similar. So you would put that Story Origin universal book link into that custom link section. And then when the reader clicks that, it'll take them to a landing page that says, okay, do you want to get this from Amazon or Kobo or Barnes & Noble, whatever retailers you've got listed there. And then Story Origin does that same geolocation thing. So if a reader is in Canada and they click on the Amazon button on that universal book link page, it will take them to amazon.ca. If it is, if the reader is in the UK, it'll take them to amazon.co.uk, Australia, amazon.com.au, etc. So having a universal book link there can be quite handy. And if you're using Story Origin's custom links feature as well, and along with that, then you can have that page hosted on your own domain. So when they click on that custom link, it'll take them to www.sherlockholmes.com or whatever your custom domain is, and it'll show that Story Origin universal book link landing page that again has the retailers you've got listed, and it'll do that geolocation stuff, but it's on the domain that you own.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and then the next point is the targeting. So little bit to say here. You can target in two ways, and you can see how basic this is. You can target by authors or by categories. One caveat, I would never, ever, ever use categories alone because they simply don't work. And also, they're not very granular. They are, for example, for romance, a little bit, but it's very likely that you won't find a subcategory that you want in here. I'll tell you when I use them in just a sec. What I always do is authors. Now, there's a little thing to say here about authors. We are aiming to get this dial in the middle on the green, which means BookBub thinks that the audience size of this author target on BookBub is the ideal size. So for example, if I am targeting a huge, gigantic author like James Patterson, you can see he has 2 million readers. I'll explain what readers means in just a sec. But let's say I'm targeting James Patterson and I add him to my targeting. Fairly broad, which means no, it's too broad. Go a little bit smaller. Okay. So what I do is I try to go into the green zone. I'm not sure this is relevant at all, but you can see
No, this
for
is
this
great.
author, for example, they tell you, yeah, it's fine. And even for authors that you might think are very, very small, like this guy here, he only has 1,000 readers. This is going to be a good target. I think we established he works. Yeah. So you can see. Now, what do readers look like? Now, this is a little bit complicated, and I don't know why they did this, but it is the way it is. It's not the likes someone gets on BookBub. It's the interactions an author gets from the readers. So, yes, the likes, but also if you click on this guy's ad, for example, you are considered one of their readers. If you comment or leave a review on their book on BookBub, you are considered a reader. So if you go on the BookBub site and you see you have 400 followers, that does not mean you have 400 readers. So if you go into the ads creation dashboard, you might see that you have much more readers. So again, the aim is always to get the targeting into this middle area here in the green. One author per campaign, especially when you're testing, because even though you do get a bit of reporting, it's not easy to determine what moved the needle if you've got more than one, and it takes longer in the fail fast approach. The
Gotcha. That makes a
categories,
ton of sense.
yeah, the categories I only ever use if this author is writing in multiple genres and I want to fine tune where the ads are going. So if he writes erotica and I don't know, thrillers, then I would specify that I'm targeting Adrian Murphy thrillers, for example. But I would
Got
never,
it.
ever use categories alone.
Got
So
it.
once you've
Or if
determined,
you're targeting someone like Joanna Penn, for example, where she
yeah,
writes, nonfiction and then fiction, you want to target one of those two, that's where you would add that category.
yes.
Got it.
Schedule and budget. So I always do run my ad continuously starting now because I go in and I stop it on my own. I don't want to make a mistake here and have an ad end before I want it to. So yes, it requires to go in and keep things checked, but it's not, it's not a big deal. Daily maximum budget, like we said before, and we're going to talk about the CPM and CPC in just a sec. But let's say I'm testing. So I've picked one target for one day. I'll stop it manually tomorrow, and I'm going to give it $5 per day. So this is going to end when it's after 24 hours it's spent $5. It's going to restart, but I do it manually, and so $5 a day, one target.
Got it. And if you do put multiple authors in that target, say for example, I'm targeting just multiple authors. Will that broaden the audience, or will that narrow the audience when I put in multiple authors?
No, we'll broaden the audience. They get summed up. All of the readers get summed up, and that's another reason why I don't recommend it.
Got it.
You do get a little, like I said, a little bit of reporting on how many clicks each author got, but it's not super reliable, so I would just go with one. And then the famous bidding type. So this is the choice, like we said, CPM, cost per 1,000 impressions, or CPC. Now, if I click on CPC, this is what they're going to tell me. This is purely based on statistics and raw numbers that they have, a little bit like on Amazon. So I don't really trust this a lot. So if you want, I don't recommend it, but if you want, you can simply start bidding with CPC and then seeing if you're getting impressions and clicks. What I do recommend is CPM. And in this case, what I was mentioning at the beginning is they are saying that the average CPM here is between 10 and 14. So likely the highest bidder is bidding 14, more or less, for this author. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put $20. Now, this does not mean you're going to spend $20 because this is the cap. So whatever and how many ever impressions I get is capped by this. But I'm telling BookBub that I'm willing to be the highest bidder. And so I get the most impressions anyway. That makes sense? It's a little
That
bit.
makes a ton of sense. Yep. Yep.
And then essentially sorry.
Yeah, this is good. And then you would just name your ad and then you'd hit continue and that's basically gets you up and running.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Sweet.
Ad.
We are 6 minutes over time, so I do just want to mention for anyone that needs to drop, don't worry. I will be sending out a replay link later if you have to miss a little bit here at the end, you can watch the replay link with the rest. But before you go, Brian, I did have a couple additional questions. So could we do like a quick lightning round style thing?
Yes, of course. One thing I wanted to say,
Yeah. Yes, please.
we probably should have mentioned, was what is the metric that gives me, that lets me decide if a test has gone well or not. So that's one of the important things. Now, in my experience, I'm looking at two things. First thing is the amount of impressions. And with $5, I'm looking to get at least 400 to 500 impressions. So if I get that much, I consider the test to be valid, if you see what I mean. The second element is the number of clicks, also known as click-through rate. If the click-through rate, which BookBub does give you in the results, is usually above 2%, I consider that author to be worthy of using in the real campaigns. Of course, if I have ways of tracking these clicks, like with Story Origin, for example, or the Amazon attribution links, then I can go deeper and see how many books I actually sold from those clicks, and I can do more evaluations. But in general, just to give you ballpark figures, at least 500 impressions, at least 2% CTR or better.
Got it. That is very good guideposts for authors to know. So yeah, and could you just quickly explain how click-through rate is calculated?
Yeah, essentially the click-through rate is calculated based on the impressions and the people who have clicked. It's the percentage of people who have clicked on your ads, who have seen it, obviously, and have clicked.
Got it. So if your ad was shown to 10 people and you got one click on that ad, then you would have a 10% click-through rate. Or maybe even easier is if that ad was shown to 100 people and two people clicked on it, then you would have a 2% click-through rate.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And one neat little feature that they do is they do now tell you historically how these authors have performed for you. So obviously you can see here, these ones were very good. And so they're reminding me on top, but if I scroll down, these ones, I mean, they're still good, but a little bit less, but it's good when you're running, for comps, looking for other comps that you didn't think about. For example, you can use that. For example, you can also have a look at these, the related authors. Again, not super great recommendations, but it can get you, started if you don't have many ideas in terms
Right.
of targeting.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And so just quick, because we're over time here, and this has been super helpful. And I think that this is going to be great information for a lot of authors. BookBub ads for launches versus backlist. Uh, any difference in how you would run a campaign there?
You would be more aggressive for launches, but you can also run them for backlist. Launches is much more recommended because the audience on BookBub are looking for cheap books or discounted books, and preferably lots of them at a lower price. So the ideal scenario is launching, for example, a box set, for example, with a discount. But in general, much more effective for launches than backlist.
And then when you are running those ads, how frequently do you need to refresh them? Like how often or like how long can you run a campaign with a particular graphic and tagline before you need to change it up so that you don't fatigue the audience?
Depends on the audience size of that target, obviously, but in general, if the targeting is good and the testing has been good and it keeps on delivering, then it can go for a year or more.
Oh wow.
So
Awesome.
you
Um
obviously check it, but it can go a
Right.
long time.
You have to keep an eye on it as
Yeah,
long as as long as your click-through rate remains high on it, it can go upwards of a year even. That's good to know.
yeah, even more.
But yeah, if you see that click-through rate starts to fall after a month or something, that would be okay, we gotta change things up here.
Yeah.
Um, what are some like just the quick like most common mistakes that you see with authors running BookBub ads?
Um, I think the most common one is not using a professional to do the graphics, because they are very, very important. Again, I'm going to be super quick. So
Right.
graphics using CPC, again, I'm a little bit strict about this, but I think it hurts you when you start with that. Um, Only using it for fiction. Sometimes nonfiction does well, as you have seen from our graphics on BookBub. It can be used. So yeah, those are I think are the most common mistakes.
And then any genres that perform better than others with BookBub ads.
Traditionally, the whale readers genres like romance, thrillers, and the most popular genres perform better, and also coupled with Kindle Unlimited, because the audience is always looking for the new read at a discounted price. That's generally what happens. But anything with scarcity is performs well, even if it's a Kindle countdown deal, for example. It can perform really, really well.
Okay. And then any other tools or resources that you would recommend authors check out in relation to BookBub ads for designing the graphics or coming up with a copy or anything along those lines?
Yeah, mostly I would suggest obviously having a look at what the others are doing, subscribing to BookBub as a reader, and having your own little library of graphics that you like, but also that you saw made you click, so that it's something that it entices you, so it might entice your readers as well. The BookBub blog for writers, which you will find at the end of that page I shown you, and it's the partners.bookbub.com. They've got a very good blog that goes into the details of every aspect. And then, yeah, that's it.
Awesome. All right, that is it. I'll wrap it there. And if authors have more questions that we didn't get answered, or if we missed some from the chat, how can authors get in touch with you?
So my direct email, where you can write to me, I'm happy to answer any questions you have on BookBub ads for free or Amazon ads, is Brian at bookads.co. I put it in the chat. brian@bookads.co.
Fantastic.
Um, so, and obviously, you're more than welcome to visit the sites as well, bookads.co. But if you want to get to me directly, I'm more than happy to help.
Awesome. And anywhere else that we should check out to follow you? Book ads would be the best place to learn more about your services. Are there any other like social media places that we ought to check out that you regularly post on or anything?
No, the only other link I suggest you keep an eye on is Fiction Marketing Academy. Let me write .com, fictionmarketingacademy.com. Like I said, it's the event that's going to happen at the end of October, all about book marketing for fiction authors. We've still got last year's page there, but it will be updated soon. So hope to see you
Awesome.
there.
Awesome. Thanks so much again, Brian, for coming
Thanks.
on. Thank you to everyone for hanging out with us and having so many awesome questions. This was super insightful to me. Hopefully, it was insightful to everyone else. And hopefully, we'll catch you guys in the next one. All right. Bye, everyone.